I'll be taking the car back home, so you got to walk back home from the airport. Always stuck doing house chores and messing around on the computer. You must be lacking exercise, right? It should take you about 3 hours to get home, so hang in there." The words that Kyle blurted out were filled with a chilling coldness. As soon as he got into the car, he kicked me out with a command to walk, his smirk full of disdain, like that of a child pulling off his favorite prank. From that smile, it was clear Kyle was thoroughly enjoying himself. Faced with my husband's sarcastic demeanor, I managed a resigned smile and said, "Come on, it won't take 3 hours, will it? Where exactly are you trying to send me back to, huh? To our house?" "Obviously, geez. What are you even talking about? This is why I can't stand dumb women. That's my line. What are you on about? It's just a 9-minute walk from the airport to my new place." Right after Kyle's face twisted into a huge laugh, grinning ear to ear, his laughter filled the car, echoing around as if saturating the air inside. He seemed to react to the words "new place," convinced I'm lying. His laughter left no doubt that he was mocking me, indicating that my words were true without any room for skepticism. Various people were around us. Men in suits looking like businessmen, families, a couple in their 60s, young women, each moving with their own purpose. Yet, to Kyle, engrossed in his own laughter, these people seemed irrelevant. It was as if he couldn't see the world outside the car. He continued to laugh, oblivious to the bustle around him. His smile seemed to place him in a world filled with joy, yet a dark undertone lurked behind that laughter. "Alice, stop making me laugh. You really think I'd believe such an obvious lie? Stop talking nonsense and just start walking. It's going to get dark if you don't hurry." "Well, if you're going to talk like that, why don't you come and check for yourself? You might not find it so funny then. But honestly, whether you believe me or not doesn't bother me in the slightest." "Oh, if you're that confident, then prove it. You do realize what will happen if you're lying, right?" My challenging demeanor caused irritation to seep across Kyle's face. His brow furrowed and his mouth twisted in annoyance. His irritation was so intense that he couldn't control the volume of his voice, echoing loudly in the car and attracting surprised looks from people around us. Seeing this, far from being intimidated, I almost burst out laughing. It was because I knew Kyle was about to step into his own nightmare. With that renewed determination, I began walking towards my new home. 9 minutes after our exchange at the airport, Kyle and I found ourselves in front of an apartment building. It was an ordinary-looking 12-story building, 3 years old, with a view of planes taking off. Kyle gazed slightly at the side of the building. From his expression, it was clear he was thinking something, but he quickly adopted a nonchalant look and spoke to me. "Alice, just admit it. You're lying about moving to a new place, right? Better come clean before you get caught for trespassing. Quit your fussing and just come inside." Despite my words, Kyle seemed unconvinced and followed me with a dismissive "yeah." However, as we rode the elevator up to the 5th floor, I noticed unease in his eyes and a hint of tension around his mouth. When I glanced at his profile, it looked as if he was hiding something. Upon arriving at the 5th floor and unlocking the door to the apartment, Kyle's composure vanished completely. His complexion changed and anxiety and tension visibly increased, yet he tried to maintain a facade of confidence, which only seemed more hollow. The moment the door opened, Kyle started trembling uncontrollably. His face showed a mix of shock and fear. Seeing this, I couldn't help but smile with satisfaction. Inside, I was convinced that Kyle had finally accepted reality. What? Why are my dad and mom here? In front of us were my in-laws, their faces red with anger, looking furious. The peculiar atmosphere was enough to make Kyle imagine that something serious was happening. Weren't you two supposed to go on a trip today? How come you're here, Kyle? We told you a fake plan. It was all set up to ambush you. We're on Alice's side, Kyle. We cooperated to teach you a lesson. Although my in-laws explained the situation, Kyle seemed utterly baffled. Why go through the trouble of telling me a false plan to set up an ambush? Why am I being punished by my own parents? Kyle must be full of questions. Without resolving any of his doubts, Kyle cautiously sat down in front of his parents, trying to gauge their mood as he sought clarification. Can someone explain clearly? I have no idea what you're talking about with this ambush and punishment. There's no point in lying, Kyle. We've seen everything. How you left Alice at the airport, trying to make her walk home. Instantly, my father-in-law pulled out his smartphone and showed Kyle the screen. Then, Kyle's eyes widened, and within seconds, his forehead was covered in sweat. The screen displayed our exchange at the airport, vividly capturing the moment. The scene where Kyle was mocking me and raising his voice played back as a video. Kyle's expression changed drastically. His mouth tightly shut, he looked away from the screen, his face betraying a realization. In that moment, Kyle's entire body was shaking, and sweat was visible. My father-in-law quietly put away his phone and stared at Kyle. In his eyes, there seemed to be deep anger and disappointment. In the silence, the room's atmosphere became increasingly tense. I just can't wrap my head around why Dad would have something like this. When did you even manage to film this? This was filmed earlier at the airport. We've been watching the whole time. You didn't notice because you were inside the car. When Kyle had laughed loudly at the airport, there were various people around. Businessmen in suits, families, couples in their 60s, and young women. They each moved about the airport joyously engaged in departures and reunions. Among them were Kyle's parents. I had already discussed Kyle's true nature with them. They agreed to witness today's events in person after hearing my concerns. Kyle had unknowingly walked right into my trap. His parents quietly watched Kyle, and a silence lingered for a while. The next to speak was my mother-in-law. Kyle, we can't believe this. How could anyone think it's okay to leave their spouse at the airport to walk home? No, it was just an argument that got out of hand. I didn't mean any harm. It's true, leaving the woman you love behind isn't something a person does. Kyle, who said you could laugh? Are you joking around? His father interjected, with his mother glaring sharply at him. In that instant, Kyle's demeanor changed, and he became immobilized, like a frog under a snake's gaze. His face turned pale. The atmosphere in the room shifted dramatically, filling with a tense silence. Observing the in-laws' expressions, I sensed more disappointment than anger. They had high expectations for Kyle. He had always been straightforward and diligent, facing challenges without faltering. His behavior had been praised by everyone, with a bright future anticipated. Yet beneath that was the reality of how he treated me, his wife. The shock of learning their beloved son indulged in tormenting his spouse was hard for the in-laws to accept. Sensing the in-laws' feelings, I decided it was time to reveal the truth to Kyle. Amidst his father's stern gaze and his mother's quiet anger, I began to disclose the facts. Kyle, I've been struggling for a while now. Just 6 months into our marriage, you changed drastically. I knew you were working hard, but you were always away on business trips, never making time for us. Then the bullying started, and I kept wondering why until I realized the truth. You are having an affair. I've informed your parents not just about the bullying, but also about the affair. At the mention of the affair, Kyle's stunned silence broke, and he looked at me, his gaze piercing, almost making me falter. but his parents intervened. Kyle, biting his lower lip in frustration, spoke up. "Hold on, I'll admit to the bullying, or rather, I went too far sometimes. I didn't realize it, but if that hurt you, Alice, I apologize. However, I haven't cheated. You should provide proof before making such claims. I don't have proof right now, but it's clear you're cheating. Like your father said, lying is pointless. Wouldn't it be better to admit it now and avoid further hurt? What you're accusing me of without proof, you're going to confuse my parents." Kyle's inability to hide his true self in front of his parents was evident. It was the usual pattern. As soon as his position weakened, he would start yelling loudly as he became more defensive. The rest of us cooled off. I say it again. Lying is pointless because I know everything. I may not have proof right now, but there is a witness. I'll call her over. Just wait. After making the call, the intercom buzzed. Within 3 minutes, when the person entered, Kyle froze as if time had stopped. She's the witness. Her name is Karen. Though, Kyle, you hardly need an introduction, right? She's your affair partner. Karen has also seen your true nature. She was at the airport alongside your parents. Wait, Karen? Why is she here? I didn't know about this. My investigation had revealed Kyle's affair with Karen, an employee from a client company. I had secretly made contact with Karen. Talking with Karen made it clear that Kyle had been hiding his marital status from her while they were dating. Karen had believed they were in a serious relationship and was deeply shocked to learn of Kyle's deception. Naturally, she couldn't accept that Kyle had lied. Thus, I arranged for her to be at the airport to expose Kyle. The moment Kyle saw my new apartment, he grimaced slightly, but not because of its location. Karen lived in the same building. Kyle likely never dreamed that I would be in contact with Karen. That's why he quickly put on a confident facade, but it was completely off the mark. In fact, my move to this apartment was strategic to get closer to Karen. Even me picking you up from the airport today was part of the plan to expose your true self. I might not have physical evidence right now, but do we really need it when Karen herself has admitted to the affair? Though Karen was also deceived by you, so she's a victim here as well. I told Kyle with a mix of scorn and disdain, revealing everything to a clueless husband underestimating me as incapable. Kyle ended up exposing his true nature on his own. He was thinking I was just a housewife with a hobby for computers, assuming his affair would never be discovered. It's pitiful, really. Why, I didn't see it until we were married, blinded by the idea of marital bliss. I couldn't see the truth until now. What's clear is Kyle has done something irredeemable. He deceived me, his parents, and Karen. And even when caught, he tried to deny everything. All Kyle can do now is admit his foolishness and apologize as soon as possible. There's no escaping this. Any further denial only worsens his situation. Alice, aren't you taking this too far? Surveillance at the airport, an ambush at our new home, and even moving into the same building as Karen over just an affair seemed extreme. You wouldn't understand, Kyle. As long as you minimize it as just an affair, yes, it may be extreme. But you've done enough to warrant it. You cheated with Karen, bullied me, and tried to push for divorce by making life unbearable, all the while hiding your true self from your own parents. You really need to take a hard look at yourself calmly and plainly, yet with unmistakable clarity. I looked directly into Kyle's eyes and stated my piece. His parents and Karen, sharing my sentiments, fixed their stern gazes on Kyle. My plan had unfolded as intended. But for Kyle, everything was unexpected, leaving him with no excuses to offer. Slowly, he started apologizing. I'm so sorry. Karen was just so beautiful and young. I couldn't help but lie to make her mine. Everything Alice said about bullying and wanting a divorce is true. I wanted Alice to be the one to ask for it. As he began to say this, Kyle was suddenly lifted into the air. My father-in-law's rage exploded like a volcano. Lifted forcibly, Kyle flailed his legs about, but his father didn't budge an inch. Tell me, Kyle, when was the last time you had a proper conversation with Alice? She told me she wanted to support you in every way possible. The work from home you mock was all started for your sake. And yet, you... Kyle fell from his father's grasp, coughing and turning his gaze towards me. Since Kyle changed, there had been no real conversation between us. More precisely, he had stopped listening to anything I said. Even when I talked about my work from home, he dismissed it as just a housewife's hobby. It's not just Alice you've lied to, Karen as well, attempting to ruin the life of such a young woman. What a foolish thing to do. Overwhelmed, the mother-in-law looked like she was on the verge of tears. And finally, Kyle, trembling, seemingly coming to a realization. The sight of him repeatedly apologizing with, "I'm so sorry," seemed like we were dealing with a completely different person than before, truly reflecting his remorse. The in-laws, still angry, seemed slightly relieved that Kyle was sincerely apologizing. Alice, it was all my fault. I know it's unforgivable, but here I am, asking for a fresh start from today. Can we try again? Kyle apologized to me as well, silencing the room. Yet my next action stunned everyone. Kyle, you're such a joke. Father, mother, and Karen, isn't Kyle just ridiculous? My laughter, even louder than Kyle's at the airport, left everyone perplexed. It seemed bizarre, but knowing everything, I couldn't help but laugh. As my laugh subsided, I pulled out a thick envelope from my bag and tossed it at Kyle. What? Kyle hurriedly picked up the thick envelope, possibly sensing something ominous. Kyle swallowed nervously and cautiously checked the contents of the envelope. The moment he did, he trembled so violently, it seemed the room itself shook. That's the result of a separate investigation into your affairs, Kyle. Besides Karen, you were seeing other women concurrently during your travels. Essentially, these are your local wives across various regions. Local wives, Kyle? Were you planning to deceive us further? Kyle's earnest apology was merely a facade to prevent another affair from being exposed. All those promises of changing his mind were just lies, perhaps. He thought if he could just get through this moment, everything else would somehow work out. If so, he's truly foolish. Kyle, all you can do now is get a divorce and pay alimony. I never want to see your face again. So let's handle the rest through our lawyers. Don't mess with me. You said you had no evidence, yet you deceived me. Who deceived whom first? Can you now understand how it feels to be deceived? Crap, Alice, you'll regret this. You know there's no way you, a mere housewife, can survive on your own. Don't you dare come crawling back to me. Kyle had dropped his facade off, and he approached with a menacing demeanor. Yet his figure was just laughable to me. The one to regret would be Kyle, yet he left our new home with those parting words, clueless of what awaited him. The tension in the air eased, and we all took a seat simultaneously. My in-laws and Karen deeply apologized to me. Alice, we're so sorry for all of this. It's our fault for not noticing sooner, causing you such distress. And Karen, we've truly troubled you. We'll make Kyle take responsibility. Just wait, we will chase him to the ends of the earth, if we have to. Please, everyone, don't apologize. Thank you for going along with my plan. Kyle indeed deserves to face consequences, but there's no need for an exhaustive chase. He will surely reach out to us without fail. With a slight smile, my in-laws and Karen looked at me, puzzled by my assurance. They hadn't fully grasped my plan yet, but it was not out of bravado or denial, but a certainty I held. I say it again, but Kyle knows nothing, and I know everything. The path Kyle was on was clear to me. I intended to watch silently until he realized the consequences of his actions. A month had passed since then. I worked at my computer in my new home. A gentle breeze blew outside, rustling the trees. The serene silence in the room was broken by my phone vibrating. The 100th missed call. All of those calls were from my ex-husband. Taking a deep breath, I answered. As I held the smartphone to my ear, I could hear my ex-husband's voice. It was a mix of surprise, anxiety, and a hint of hope. Finally, you pick up. Why ignore me when I'm in such trouble? Oh, you're in trouble, huh? What happened? I was deceived. One of these local wives turned out to be a scam artist. She took all my money, and now I'm being chased by some scary guys. It's really bad. That sounds tough. Good luck with that. Hey, don't hang up, please. I'm begging you. Just a little help. I've got no money, can't go home. I'm done for without you. Who is it that said, "Don't come to me with regrets, never to come crying back"? I knew everything, including the fact you were being deceived, but I chose not to say anything. I thought it was pointless to tell you anything, and you wouldn't understand without experiencing the consequences firsthand. With that, his voice vanished from the call. Perhaps now Kyle regretted his actions, but I wouldn't help him. People like him can't empathize with others' pain without experiencing it themselves. You only think of yourself, that's why you're in this situation. I have work to do, so don't call me again. What work? It's just your hobby. I didn't want to have to say this, but my annual income is higher than yours, Kyle. I've found success as a web novelist, plus there's my blog, YouTube channel, and more. So I can live on my own just fine. You can rest easy knowing I'll never have to depend on you again. What? You earn more than me? Wait, can you lend me just a little money then? My ex-husband was saying something, but I just hung up and immediately blocked his number. I could only sigh deeply at my ex-husband's selfishness until the very end. Later on, I learned through my in-laws about his situation. As soon as he realized he couldn't get help from me, he turned to them for assistance. But since they were already informed about his current state, they were furious all over again. Even there, he continued to make excuses, leading to his parents finally disowning him. Unable to rely on anyone, he fled, moving away and changing jobs. But it appears that the threatening men followed him to his new location. So it seems that he even sought refuge near his parents' home. At one point, he sent messages of regret and reflection to his disowned parents, but it was all too late and entirely his own doing. If you do wrong, it inevitably comes back to you. He must be feeling the weight of that truth now.